In the charming village of Sunflower Hollow, nestled between rolling hills and sparkling streams, lived a curious little girl named Lisa. Lisa was known for her bright smile, her flowing chestnut hair, and her endless collection of treasures. Her room was like a magical cave, filled with shiny stones she had gathered by the river, colorful feathers from her forest walks, ribbons tied in perfect bows, and stacks of golden-covered books that told stories of adventure and wonder. Lisa loved her treasures deeply and guarded them closely. Every time her younger brother, Harry, peered into her room and asked, "Lisa, can I borrow one of your books?" she would shake her head firmly. "No, Harry. These are my special things. You can play with your own toys." Harry would shrug and wander off, leaving Lisa alone with her collection. She did not mean to be unkind, she just believed that her treasures were hers and hers alone. One day, after a heavy rainstorm, Lisa decided to explore the meadow near her home. The grass was lush and green, glistening with tiny droplets of rain. The sky was a brilliant blue, with fluffy white clouds drifting lazily. Lisa carried her satchel, ready to collect any new treasures she might find. As she walked through the meadow, she noticed something unusual. Near the base of an old oak tree, she heard soft sniffles. Lisa stopped in her tracks, her heart beating faster. "Who's there?" she called out gently. From behind the tree, a tiny squirrel emerged. His fur was damp, and his big brown eyes were filled with tears. "Oh, hello," he squeaked, looking up at Lisa. "I am sorry to bother you. I did not mean for anyone to hear me." Lisa knelt down to the squirrel's level. "Why are you crying?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. The squirrel wiped his eyes with his tiny paws. "I spent all autumn gathering acorns to store for winter," he explained. "But during the storm last night, the wind knocked over my hiding place, and now I have nothing left. I do not know what to do." Lisa's heart ached as she listened to the squirrel's story. She thought about the jar of acorns she had collected just last week. It was one of her favorite treasures, sitting proudly on her shelf. For a moment, she hesitated. If I give him my acorns, she thought, I'll have fewer treasures. But then, she looked at the squirrel's tearful face and felt a warm tug in her chest. "Wait here," she said, standing up. The squirrel blinked in surprise. "Where are you going?" "I'll be right back," Lisa promised. She ran all the way home, her satchel bouncing against her side. Once inside, she climbed onto her stool and reached for the jar of acorns. She hesitated briefly, but then she smiled, imagining how happy the squirrel would be. When Lisa returned to the meadow, the squirrel was still sitting by the tree, looking sad and defeated. She held out the jar. "Here," she said. "These are for you." The squirrel's eyes widened in disbelief. "For me? Really?" His tiny paws trembled as he took the jar. "Thank you. You have saved me." Lisa watched as the squirrel carefully tucked the jar under his arm. Then, to her surprise, he scampered up the tree and returned with a shiny golden leaf. "This is for you," he said, placing it in Lisa's hand. "A gift for your kindness." Lisa smiled, her heart feeling lighter than ever. As she walked home, she thought about how good it felt to help someone in need. The golden leaf shimmered in her hand, but the warmth in her chest was the real treasure. The next day, Lisa was walking through the village when she saw Mrs. Smith, the elderly woman who sold flowers at the market. Mrs. Smith was struggling to carry a heavy basket of herbs and blossoms. Her steps were slow, and her back was bent from the weight. Lisa ran up to her. "Mrs. Smith, can I help you with your basket?" she asked. Mrs. Smith looked at her with a grateful smile. "Oh, that would be lovely, dear. Thank you." Lisa took the basket and walked with Mrs. Smith to the market. Once they arrived, Mrs. Smith handed Lisa a small bouquet of daisies. "For you," she said. "Kindness deserves kindness in return." Lisa tucked the daisies into her satchel, her heart glowing with happiness. As she walked home, she noticed other opportunities to help. She held open a gate for Farmer Joe, who was carrying a crate of apples. She helped little Harry untangle his kite string. And she even shared her ribbons with her friend Lucy, who wanted to decorate her doll house. That evening, as Lisa sat in her room surrounded by her treasures, she had an idea. She would host a kindness festival for the entire village. She spent the next week preparing. She baked cookies shaped like hearts and stars, decorated the meadow with ribbons and lanterns, and created little gift bags filled with treasures from her collection. When the day of the festival arrived, the meadow was alive with laughter and joy. Villagers of all ages gathered to share stories, play games, and enjoy the delicious treats Lisa had made. Lisa stood on a tree stump and clapped her hands for attention. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice ringing with excitement. "Today, we are celebrating kindness. I have learned that sharing what we have and helping others is the greatest treasure of all." The villagers cheered, and soon they began sharing their own acts of kindness. Mr. Baker talked about how he gave free bread to a hungry traveler. Farmer Joe shared how he let a stray kitten sleep in his barn. Even little Harry stood up and said, "I helped Mama fold the laundry yesterday." As the sun set and the lanterns cast a warm glow over the meadow, Lisa felt a deep sense of happiness. She realized that the more kindness you give, the more it grows, like a tiny spark turning into a glowing fire. From that day on, Lisa became known as Lisa the Kind. She continued to share her treasures, help her neighbors, and spread joy wherever she went. Sunflower Hollow became a place where kindness blossomed like wildflowers, and everyone learned that the magic of love and sharing was the greatest treasure of all.